Doctor, we just touched on ADHD a little bit and how prevalent that has become in the last 15, 20 years. Why is that? And it seems like we get bombarded by the media saying, "Oh, if your kid has this, then he must have this." And why has that become such a, I guess, popular diagnosis, for lack of a better term?
Well, what happened to myself personally before I wrote Dr. Bob's Guide to Stop ADHD in 18 Days, I saw a snapshot in the USA Today. Down the bottom corner in the front page, they usually have those. But they had a map of the U.S. that had where all the snack food was being consumed. And believe it or not, in the Midwest is where most of it was being consumed. The second most was over in the East Coast. A year later, now I saved certain articles. I thought that was significant. And I had read some articles about snack food and the oils they used to make it. Well, a year later, our local newspaper did a 5-day program on Ritalin and all the meds in the United States. Now, this is back in 1996. The map, see, Ritalin is a Schedule II drug. Methylphenidate. It's like cocaine. It's an amphetamine. In the map of the United States, there was a little county in the upper part of Michigan called Dickinson County, where 8% of the kids were on Ritalin. There was more Ritalin in the school principal office than there was in the pharmacy. I remembered the snapshot. I looked at the snapshot. I looked at the United States, and I had an epiphany. And the epiphany was, there's something in the food, like there's something in the water that's causing this. So I had an acquaintance of mine who wrote a book that said, trans fat. Now, normal fat molecules are C-shape. They have a half-life of 18 days. When they make trans fat or partially hydrogenated oils, they're T-shape when they heat them. C's and T's don't interlock. Your brain sends messages on a layer of fat. This is be like the nervous system, called the myelin sheath. When I looked at the book, there's a fat in the brain. This is going to be a big word now. Docosahexaenoic acid. DHA for short. DHA bathes the brain and gives information that just helps the brain function optimally. Well, in the human body, unbeknownst to most of us in the USA, the food we eat becomes us. Somewhere along the way, that equation has been taken out. So what you eat becomes you. Well, what you eat has to go through steps. And those steps need vitamin B6, calcium, magnesium, and zinc, for example. So it needs those to make the recipe to make the DHA. So I'm showing you a formula right here. Trans fat, which is over here on the formula, sabotages your body's natural ability to make DHA. Because in the book, Dr. Bob's Guide to Stop ADHD in 18 Days, we talk about the half-life of cis fat and trans fat. So a lot of science believes today that genetically as a species, we can no longer make DHA from the food we eat. That's why everybody needs to use marine oil. Well, the marine oil in the world today is toxic. So we promote an anchovy sardine-based marine oil. Fish are smaller, less potential for toxins. So if you have a diet of French fries, which the average American consumes 28 pounds of French fries per year, that's going to sabotage DHA. So in the late 70s, the fast food industry went from beef tallow and lard to make fries. Now, when I was a kid, the first fast food restaurant came into my community in 1962.
Okay.
It's a long time ago. We would go to the fast food store twice a year. The French fries were 2 ounces, made in beef tallow or lard. As time went on, everybody thought the reason that we had high cholesterol was from beef and et cetera. In the late 70s, the fast food industry flipped, went and started using trans fat, which, by the way, has a half-life of 51 days. In the early 80s, economics in the world changed. Two people in the family are going to work. So moms are going to work. They needed convenience food. Well, back in the day, and even still today, trans fat is convenience food. It's snack food. So moms are going to work, kids da-da-da-da. And then that happened until about the early 1990s. So imagine kids are eating a lot of this food that's sabotaging the body's ability to send the message down, C-shape, T-shape. In the early 90s, our government allowed ADHD to be considered a disability. Our schools started getting compensated for kids who had ADHD. You see what he's saying? They started getting money. Now, I have done radio all over the United States. And I was doing a radio program in Cincinnati, Ohio. And, you know, live talk radio. So when you do live talk call on radio, that's always interesting. I had a guy call up, and he was angry. And I thought he was angry at me. He was not angry at me at all. He was angry at his ex-wife. Because his ex-wife put their son on Ritalin. Guess why? To get the money. Now, I'm not saying people with ADHD are all doing that shit. I'm just making a point. So, in 1995, we talked about the nurses study in the past. We talked about trans fatty acids. So what's happening is National School Lunch Program. 31 million kids eat the National School Lunch Program. We had the law, the trans fat law that happened in 2005 when they said packets that say 0 grams trans fat on it. It had a half a gram of trans fat or less per serving. Well, recently, the city of New York stopped using trans fat in their restaurants. And we had a part doing with that because I did a radio show on WFAN in New York with Bob Salter on a Sunday, and the guy that was in charge of this whole whatever was going on out there heard me speak, got my book. We sent 10 books over there. I mean, it was very interesting. The state of California does not allow trans fat anywhere in the state in any of the restaurants. City of Cleveland and other cities are doing the same thing. So trans fat is sabotaging these kids' ability to function optimally. So most people don't think about even having good oil. So snack foods have trans fatty acids in them. Healthy foods have cis fats. Half-life of this, 51 days. Half-life of this, 18 days. That's why the title of the book is Dr. Bob's Guide to Stop ADHD in 18 Days. The challenge, though, with the T is the half-life is 51 days. So somebody could easily have a breakfast pastry, a breakfast roll, breakfast cereals, even today. Before we did this program, I was at one of our local grocery stores. A very popular breakfast cereal has trans fat in it. So if a child has trans fat in it, and in the book we talk about it, see, it's all about DHA. This is the big sabotager right here, because most people don't realize it has a long half-life. There's actually one of the major people that used to make a lot of these snack foods, Hostess. They're having financial problems today because people are voting with their wallets. They're not buying it. So there's a big shift. That's what's so awesome about your program that we're having here today. So when these kids are eating this trans fat, the trans fat sabotages DHA. Sugar comes into the play. The average American consumes 150 pounds of sugar every year. People love sugar. They're passionate about sugar. I mean, sugar is addictive. That's probably the most difficult thing for people to get away from is this. But what people don't realize is that sugar takes B6, zinc, magnesium, and B vitamins out of the body. Remember we talked about the recipe at the beginning of the program. Now another one that concerns people, and it concerns me, is dairy products. I am not telling anybody to stop dairy, but when's the last time you saw a cow eating cottage cheese, milk, or ice cream? Where do they get their calcium from? They get their calcium from hay, grass, and alfalfa. I encourage people, obviously, to eat greens and a variety of vegetables to get their calcium. But see, cow's milk has a protein in it called casein. Cow's milk has a fat in it called arachidonic acid. Arachidonic acid, when it's consumed on a regular basis, which most people do, especially kids, sabotages DHA. So my wife and I were traveling one point, and if someone finds out you're Dr. Bob and what do you do, and yada, 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 this woman had a 2.5, 3-year-old boy who had tantrums because he was on the little expedition we were on. And she said, what's going on? So I started chit-chatting with her a little bit and found out that her son drank like 1.5 gallons of milk every 2 or 3 days. So I just suggested to her, in love, of course, stop the dairy products. I got home a week later. She did a 5-star review on Amazon for me. Son totally changed, just getting off of dairy. So dairy could be the issue. Sugar could be the issue. Trans fat is obviously the issue. You know, some people talk about lead. Preservatives, the Fengold diet, preservatives, food coloring, additives, that also can sabotage the formation of the DHA in the brain. Doesn't have a half-life. Just taking fish oil for the sake of taking fish oil is not correct either. So science caught up with me. You say, what does that mean, Dr. Bob? Well, we have the ability right now, with a prick of blood out of a little finger, to send it to a lab to do what we call an essential fatty acid blood spot test. So I could have somebody come into my office, test them for the DHA levels. Now, we have people that come to see us that are bipolar, and they're suicidal. I had one girl that tried to commit suicide 3 times. My record was one lady tried to commit 12 times, but this girl tried 3. Mom was very concerned, and I'd be concerned too, 21-year-old trying to commit suicide. And you know, about 2,000 kids kill themselves every year in America. So we did the blood spot test to her. Her DHA was low. Her EPA was low. Her alpha-linolenic acid was low, and I know those oils, those are important, but her trans fat, if they could have made the page longer, her trans fat was out of the ballpark. So, you know, I grilled the girl, what are you eating? Because they like to dance around it all. Bottom line was she was eating French fries on a regular basis, as most of the people watching us who have kids. So you could eat French fries, cook them in rice oil, cook them in olive oil, cook them in coconut oil, bake them in the oven, but not in trans fatty acid. Took her off the trans fat, put her on the appropriate supplementation. Ta-da! She's alive today because she made those appropriate and necessary lifestyle changes. Here's the really good news. Now, we've been really studying this whole ADHD issue for 20 years. The kids today, in the new millennium, are very smart. They're beyond smart. I have Asperger kids that come in. They're literally geniuses. So I'm seeing a shift that's going on right now. And I'm not saying this to be unkind. I really believe the school system and the educational process in America is not kept up with the whole. Our kids are learning so fast, at such a fast rate. You cannot go, the kids that are really super intelligent cannot go into a traditional classroom on a chalkboard or a whiteboard and be entertained. They need fast stimulation. So in various states, they're actually having computers and on the internet. And these. So I've had Asperger kids, and I am telling you, 18 days, they turn around totally. We get them off the sugar, we get them off the items. Now, I'm going to mention a food that I think is one of the worst foods in the world that'll cause ADHD. Are you ready for this? Drum roll, please. Skittles. Because of the sugar, and the coloring and some of the other ingredients that sabotage DHA in the brain. So if you ever go on an airplane, there's a kid in front of you that has a bag of Skittles, go on another flight, or go to the back of the plane. If you go to a movie, it is the exact same thing. And just everybody watching me around the world right now, just trust me. Now, there are a lot of other foods, trans fat. We're talking about DHA.